Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen on a Spotify or Apple Podcasts and get more information about previous shows on our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Robert Lieberman, aka Rob. And Rob, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this on YouTube. Okay, give them a big
Hi,
wave.
everybody.
Okay,
I'm in downtown New Jersey.
that is, and I should also mention that I know Rob well over 50 years, longer than uh, all these advertising has been in existence. And that Rob also happens to double as my cousin. So this is a real treat to have you on board, Rob. I really am so excited to do this. And Rob, what I typically do is when I interview somebody for the first time, I ask, as a kid, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and had a great childhood experience. And then at 8 or 9 years old, my parents decided to move to the suburbs of Queens. And I then lived in Queens uh, and got married when I was in Queens. And then um, ultimately, when I wanted to start a family with my wife, we moved out to New Jersey. And that's where we started the family. And simultaneously, only about a year before that, I was commuting because I started the business in Newark, New Jersey.
Because I remember you as a kid, you mentioned Brooklyn, and then was it Jamaica? It was Jamaica, New York,
I went to
considered.
Jamaica High School. That was in Queens.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, I always remember I always remember going up a hill to your apartment there, right? And I still
Yep.
remember that. But you grew up then there, and you were as a kid, you wanted at one point in time you wanted to be a lawyer. Is that correct?
Yes. When I went to law school, I always had a yearn for business. But when I was in undergraduate college as part of the SUNY system at Buffalo, I thought I would rather um, pursue a legal education after college, and I always knew I could either use the that education in business or continue to pursue law.
And so what always kind of impressed me with that fact that, I remember when you got your law degree, but then at that point in time, is that when you started your business?
I I actually started my business almost simultaneously with graduating law school out in New Jersey. They were almost at the same time.
And so talk about that process because I remember we talked off the air about the influence our grandfather had on you in starting the business, but you had this idea to start a business. What gave you the idea?
Well, I worked for the family business of my grandfather, Blaine's father, Bernard Greenfield, and my cousin. I worked with them all my youth, and I guess law school said to me, after family law and all sorts of issues coming up in cases that I wasn't part of, that the best thing to do was do my own thing. So I by then I had sort of focused more on business and wanted to start my business in New Jersey. I'll incorporate your other point about influence of family. My grandfather, William Greenfield, owned a business called Federal Distributing in New
Right.
York. And you and I both worked for that company at various times, supplementing our summers and getting us some money in our pockets. And when I told him I wanted to start a business, he said, "You got to be under the letter A in the yellow pages." I went and researched it, and there was A advertising, double A, and triple A. So I said I can't just I didn't want to be add another A, but I wanted to be under the letter A. And I did not want to be defined at any one particular advertising service at that time. I don't know what inspired that. So I picked the word always advertising. and there was no such thing as marketing, which is probably a biggest part of my business is marketing, but it was under the umbrella of advertising, and it just fit. Always advertising. It was open ended. Where was this company going 55 years later?
Well, we should
It,
also mention, Rob, too, in terms of influence, if I can also mention, I don't want to slight anybody, but my favorite uncle was your dad, and he had
yep,
also been in advertising, right, all his life.
all his life. At that point, um, uh, my mentors were your father, Bernard, my uncle Bernie, and my father, Al, who was in the traditional end of advertising for gray advertising, Doyle, Dane, and Bernbach, large advertising companies that handled very large accounts. And I know all of that had a big influence on me,
Because
tremendous.
I always got a kick out of speaking to him. I just loved your father, and he's,
Great.
it just he was into advertising. And that was big time. That was before, by the way, before Mad Men became popular. So I always thought of when Mad Men became popular, I
Yeah.
thought I don't know if he was that
Went
kind of
back.
executive, but that was like your dad worked for a large advertising
Well,
firm.
I hope during the day he was that kind of exec.
Okay, so it was interesting. So I was impressed by you, Rob, in that so you weren't going doing that kind of traditional advertising, but you were doing all sorts of other advertising. And again, that's where I guess always fits in. Talk about then what always advertising is all about.
Well, always had a migration through a lot of different fields of advertising. We really should have been always distributing company because we distributed weekly flyers, samples directly to the consumer. And we still have a network of 350,000 homes that we deliver once a week. Flyers that, for one reason or another, lack of concentration by newspapers or the expense of direct mail, pick our option. So we have a bag of flyers and we have delivery people going out weekly. And if it's a new flyer from one of our customers, various food stores, like ShopRite and organizations like that, we deliver the flyer. Um, Doing that, uh, one of our clients came to us with a project to do work distribution work in supermarkets directly, and it was a novel feature at the time. You reach the consumer at point of purchase. So we started the very first project I'll always remember was sampling Diet 7 Up and challenging consumers whether it tasted like the real thing. And it actually was the original 7 Up. So we had samples of both of the diet and the original, and that was the consumer test. And we had probably 500 supermarkets where we placed distributors um, to do that sampling.
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about some things that I don't see much of anymore. You don't see, at least in North Carolina, you don't see flyers anymore distributed. Newspaper
Right.
flyers. You don't see sampling. I don't see much sampling done here, but still popular in where you are.
In the Northeast. Well, there is a sampling that people don't think of as sampling, which is Costco.
Okay.
Um, yeah, if you go into Costco, you could have lunch there. So there are a lot of sample opportunities.
The nerve of them, though, they stole your idea, though, Rob. It
They
could, instead of Costco, it could
did.
be it could Lieberco or whatever the
Yeah.
bastards
Well, I
stole.
tried to get that account, but they use their own employees,
Okay.
not outside contractors like myself. I did make a presentation to them,
Oh, did you
but
really? And
you
it's
don't
funny
get everything.
because
One
you,
thing we got to know in life,
you,
you just
you
don't get everything.
and Costco, it's a big deal. They're finally going to come into my town. There's a big excitement. A lot of people are excited
Oh,
by Costco. So they stole your idea, Rob. Damn it. But anyway, so you took Always then. So I was always impressed with the fact that you did that and you did lots of other things as well. You were also, I think, almost ahead of the game that when you were doing special, I call it specialty advertising or premium advertising or what do you want to call it? But you were out there. There weren't a lot of people doing it. I know that when you were doing it, and you did that on a big time too. Too.
Well, when you're in business 55 years, it does happen. What happened that was a migration, just like the first migration of living up to always. The migration to promotional advertising, specialty advertising, direct marketing was these very same demonstrators were working, let's say, for 7 Up, but they were standing there in their plain clothes. So we started with tablecloth, sashes, name tags, hats, and really exclusively in the beginning sold promotional items into our demonstrations. So again, it was a whole different field. But you're right in that sampling is an expensive, and the reason it's not as prevalent, it's an expensive method of reaching the consumer, and you don't know if that person is actually interested in your product or not. So there's a lot of back and forth dialogue, and so what happened was we stuck on to the premium part of the business, and we continued to have accounts that had no origin in sampling. They were only premium or specialty accounts. And we were fortunate enough to get extremely large accounts like Nestle Waters and all the brands that they have, and doing their sales reps, giving them promotional items. Hotels, after they made a sales pitch, would leave something with their name on it at the after the demonstration, and that's probably, if I calculate, the very largest part of our business. We have one unique add-on with that, and which is we're able to have a warehouse and distribution center where we store promotional products for our clients. We have 2 or 3 superstar salespeople in Diane Delafave and Rich Chalik, and Diane's also an officer of the company. And we have a superstar, a little nepotism here, but my oldest son, is in the business, and he runs the warehouse and distribution center and handles all the finances for the business. So it's given me a lot of pleasure to see, even though I left the family business, to see our family business continue and flourish.
Now I remember too, I think I was at the warehouse. Warehouse, the first one was located where?
We started in Newark,
Okay.
and we then realized it was very significant to be close to the airport, especially when FedEx and UPS and all those overnight delivery services, because we could deliver directly to the depot up to 8 o'clock at night to get next day delivery. And we moved, as we expanded, we moved to Hillside, New Jersey. Maybe you recall
Yeah, that's
being at that location.
I do.
But we've been in maybe 4 or 5 locations, and our headquarters is in Bloomfield, New Jersey.
Now, also you mentioned the headquarters in Bloomfield, but you're actually you do business nationwide though, is that correct? You're not just in New Jersey.
Yeah. We have accounts. We've been blessed with accounts that maybe don't even have their headquarters in the metropolitan area, but through recommendations and referrals and our own prospecting, we've gotten some very large accounts nationwide. And
yeah. So yes. One of the cool things I think too is that for your work, and this was a few years ago, but you were also recognized, what was it, by Inc. magazine for being an entrepreneur? What was the award?
Yeah. The Inc. magazine has an award called Entrepreneur of the Year.
Right.
I won it a while ago, one of the early iterations of that. And they actually have a Hall of Fame of winners located at the University of North Carolina, not that far from you, Blaine, in the Kaufman Building. And it was a very big honor. And I think it was because the story I just enunciated. I left the family business. I started a business in Newark, New Jersey, 1 year after the riots in Newark, downtown Newark, and I diversified and lived up to the name always and stuck around for a long time. And people are impressed with those various elements.
And as you said, just listening to one of the beautiful things about Always is that it enables you to move into other areas. And so,
Yep,
well,
opportunism.
I was going to ask you in terms of predicting the future, if you will, or are there any areas you tell me off the air that you see Always moving into in the future or shifting direction?
Sure. I first of all, arms and legs are always going to be important, whether AI dominates or not, meaning our warehouse and distribution and getting product into the hands of a prospect and either rewarding people at who are doing outstanding jobs. We do a lot of awards and recognition plaques, or rewarding one's customers and saying, I appreciate the business you give me. And here's a portfolio that you might like, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for you to use it. So I see the tangible elements of advertising and marketing continuing. Not necessarily the copywriting, but we're not in that business. So we have an opportunity there. I'm trying to think of one other area, Blaine, that I told you that I thought we
You
were
would, you
migrating.
think you would talk about the changing in branded merchandise. People are appreciating
Sure.
that more and more.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, we find now where people were willing to accept, let's say, a golf shirt,
Right.
and they still will if it's a gift. But if it's something you want to build up a little further on the chain, or you want to reward your own personnel, you're going to look more at Polo and Travis Matthew and all the recognized golf names. And so now you're combining your logo with a quality product which is branded. And who would rather walk around with a Patagonia jacket in the fall or something like that, rather than just a product with no brand recognition?
You mean
So
that over getting like something from an Always advertising t-shirt, you don't think that has the same brand recognition?
it's probably just below Blaine's World. Um,
Okay.
uh,
So what
people have to pay for that, and non-branded right now is still the majority of the sales. But you asked, where do I think the business is going? I see a big push to branded merchandise.
And Rob, talking to you, it reminds me of one of the beautiful things about dealing with Always advertising or some of the products you represent is it's one of the few forms of advertising I tell people that people actually say thank you to when they see it, you know? And that's such a cool thing because when you think about it, if you see a commercial on TV, you don't say thank you to it. But if you get a t-shirt, you get golf balls with an imprint or something like that. It's kind of cool, isn't it, that people are appreciative of getting that advertising?
Oh, definitely. If you're giving a quality product out, people are it's a happy transaction. That's what I would call it. And you're right. It's not going to the dentist.
Well, one of the nice things about it too is that yeah, people do thank you for it, but I also learned, Rob, the hard way, if you're going to give people something, it should be a quality item though. And because years ago I gave away pens, and I'll tell you about that later, but they were cheap pens, they were the cheapest pens I could get, and they tended to leak. and people aren't too happy with them, getting a free
No,
pen that leaked. So if you're going to spend the money, get a quality item as opposed to garbage, I guess is the key.
yeah, you really do. You really order a smaller quantity, but if you have a budget, but quality reigns. There's no question about it. And our one of the other trends of the business that is interesting, excuse me, is prior to the last 3 to 5 years, you couldn't order single items, very small quantities. You couldn't get it fast for shipping. And now everything's overnight. Excuse me, Blaine.
At all. And so one of the nice things I think also you folks can do too is you can then also you can order from Always, and then you can ship. It used to be you had to get it shipped to one person and he or she had to distribute it. With you, I can order from you and you can then ship it anywhere around the country to individual folks.
Anywhere around the world.
Yeah.
Um, Anywhere around the world. We have clients who have businesses that are around the world. And our suppliers, by turning merchandise over to us quickly, even with the long distance shipping, they're still getting product very fast. And that's been important.
And so Rob, if we wouldn't fast forward, so you started Always 55 years ago, very exciting. But then one of those things I always enjoy following about you is that you had this I guess, goal or desire to give back to the community. And we should talk a little bit about that with respect to Montclair State University in your backyard, that even though you didn't go there, you developed this relationship or affinity for Montclair. How'd that happen?
Well, I knew after this was probably 20 years ago, after being in business for that long a time, that that I wanted to give something back, and I wanted to give something back to young people, and I wanted to give something back to students. And fortunately, my neighbor, immediate neighbor, was Angelo Cali, was on the board at Montclair State along with a very close friend, and they invited me to be a member of the board. And that was 20 years ago. And I've principally worked during that time only really with two presidents of the college, Susan Cole and Jonathan Coppell, both doctors. So I probably should have put doctor in front of their name. And so that in all that time, which is a long time, to have only two
I
presidents
was going to
meant
say, for
that
sure.
is a big attraction there in terms of most, many, first of all, we're the largest Spanish speaking institution in the state. We have the highest percentage of Spanish people. But here's the one that really attracted me. Montclair State is ranked extremely high in Newsweek and other publications because it has so many first generation students, meaning their parents had never gone to college, first generation collegiate students, secondary education. And what I got involved in, because I've always been interested in finance and uh, investments, I got involved in the foundation board, which in a few words, serves to raise money, invest money, and then make the money available predominantly to the students. We are now advised by a great firm, Goldman Sachs, and we've seen our foundation reservoir and investments grow and Stan Chu and Chris Koza have been great advisors and friends way past any fees the university might have paid to Goldman. They really become part and parcel of that same feeling. You talk about doing something you like. You said that when you get a quality item, there's a very nice transaction. For me, doing something at Montclair State is that feeling. It's a wonderful feeling.
And you've been doing that for how long?
About 20 years.
Yeah. Listen,
Um,
yeah. So we should mention that you mentioned perhaps you forgot the most important thing about Montclair, though, is the fact that also if you go to Montclair, you can go to the Robert J. Lieberman room. Okay, and that's pretty cool. Talk about that. I just love that.
about 2 years ago, I wasn't going to mention that, but
Well, I
thank you.
want to.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, um, Montclair State in the business school um, awarded me a very big honor, and a student meeting rooms where it's a club room where various clubs meet in the business school, was named in my honor, and my family and the president and the head of the foundation board were there and present and gave me that great honor.
So
So I guess there's somewhat of a legacy,
okay,
somewhat of a legacy.
I'm looking at the picture. It's just a great picture to see you in front of the Robert J. Liebman Student Clubs room, and that's pretty cool, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. One other thing I should mention, Blaine, along with developing this affinity for with the younger students, is we've at always benefited because we probably had 12 interns, something like that, who have worked for us at various times. We still hear from them. They're all over the country, all over the city in various capacities, and um, take some time out to write us some really nice notes and comments on LinkedIn when we're publishing something, or they just message us, and it makes me feel really good that that the students themselves appreciate the effort.
Are any of your employees Montclair graduates?
We've had at various times probably a half a dozen of the interns graduate and come to work for us, and now we have two.
Okay, and a very good bit of advice you're giving to folks that, yeah, if you want to get an in with an organization, become an intern. Not that you guaranteed a job, but it's a great way to find out about the company, and so with those, when they do interns, are they college credit things? Do they get
Well, the
help?
way Montclair State does it is, yes, it's in lieu of a course. It's a 3 credit course, I believe. They get a credit for a full course for the internship. We, from the very beginning, and now I think most people are doing it, so I can't say it's just us, but we believed in paying the intern as well. So they get college course credit, and they get paid, and they get something gain really good experience in a work environment rather than a school room, and they have something to fall back on their resume when they go for their first job. They're really not going for their first job because they've been in the industry, they've been an intern. And I know right now a lot of college students are having difficulty finding positions in the field that they've been educated for. And I just have one word for people in that capacity: perseverance. If you have to make 50 calls to get a job, don't stop. Don't stop early, because it might be the very next one that lands a job. And it's like cold calling in business. It takes a certain kind of person who can stand up to that rejection. But both for the internship and the first job requires effort.
And it's funny because you have nothing to lose, but a lot of people won't make that. They'll make one or two calls. I always tell people this, Rob, and I do a thing on this, that you have to be willing to make a third or fourth or fifth call, and a lot of people just stop after the first call. And so, just an aside, I have a philosophy. I tell people, I'll keep calling you, Rob Liebman, until one of us dies, and
Yeah,
so I have nothing to lose by calling you back. But as you said, the perseverance is kind of the key to that.
right. Yep. Very much so. I think there was a book written about that. Somebody who makes 1 to 3 calls,
Right.
and they could have had the job at the fourth call, but never made it. And
So, Rob,
whatever
Rob, a couple
number
of
it is.
things. If folks want to find out, first of all, more about Always Advertising, what's the best bet?
All right. Well, first of all, we're all over social media. Um, I find today the biggest area is LinkedIn. So either Always Advertising or Robert Lieberman on LinkedIn. Um, I don't remember the last time I got a piece of mail um, rather than somebody contacting me because my email or my cell phone is in certain publications. But I'll give you it. Rob Lieberman, 973-768-2994. I try to use the expression for our business, we doze, but we don't close.
Well,
And so you can call me anytime.
well, one of the nice things too, I see on LinkedIn, you get quite a following on LinkedIn, but I'm always impressed. You'll respond to people, that they'll contact you,
I,
and it's very nice.
I try to make it a transaction and but a two-way conversation. And we posted some of our very, very unique gifts on over the years on LinkedIn. And our most recent, if you go to our page on LinkedIn, you'll see our holiday gift, which was a replica of the Wall Street Hotel, which existed way before the stock market crash. And the general manager, Prince, a very good friend of the company's, um, asked us for something unique, and we made a replica um, Christmas decoration to hang from your tree of the hotel. And Prince thought of it in terms of an employee gift and gave it out to all personnel at the hotel.
And I saw it
For
on LinkedIn. It's just so cool to see it, this little replica of the hotel. And lastly,
Yep,
Rob, where do you see 55 years now you have it's incredible with Always. Where do you see it going, if not 55 years from now, 10 years from now?
I see the business continuing to grow, follow its namesake. So I could have never, if you asked me 35 years ago, were we going to be doing in-store demonstrations? I wouldn't have known. But one thing I do know with Always, when a need arises, we're going to be there to do it. So the business is just going to continue to go and flourish following its name.
And I'll just add one other recommendation tying into what you said, things to look for. Look for a company that I think everybody's affected by AI, but you less so, or you use it, but there's still going to be a need for always advertising, it would seem, as opposed to, because again, you're willing to grow and change and evolve, as opposed to be the same thing too you were 55 years ago, which is just a great thing to look for, I think, if you can. So kudos to you for doing that.
Good
Um,
point. You got to stay relevant.
you do, and you certainly do it, Robert J. Liebman. Anyway, Rob,
Thank
thanks
you.
very much. Thanks very much for joining me. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. Hopefully, we'll bump into each other one of these years, if not before. Rob, be well.
Blaine, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.